Hello guys, I'm happy you are watching this video. Today we are going to talk about an important part in air law, which is airspaces. There will be a lot of information, so sit back, relax and enjoy the video. So today we are going to learn about the region of airspaces, controlled ones, advisory, non-controlled, airspaces with vertical boundaries, FAA and EASA classification, service provided and requirements, speed limitations, CTA, CTR, TMA, flight restricted areas. Flight Information Region. The biggest subdivision of the airspace in the world is the Flight Information Region. They usually coincide with national borders of the countries, but in some cases for larger countries the airspaces are subdivided into a number of regional FIRs. In small countries, some FIRs encompass the airspace of several countries. This subdivision is done by International Agreement International Civil Aviation Organization (ICAO). They existed since 1947. On the territory of this FIR, the Flight Information Service (FIS) and Alerting Service are provided. We talk about this on the next slide. The Flight Information Region (FIR) can be separated to Flight Information Service Zone (FIS) zones. In one FIR we can see 4 FI zones with flight information services provided with different frequencies. These services are available to any aircraft. They can inform you about potentially conflicting traffic, information about traffic, alerting services provided, meteorological information, aerodromes, possible hazard to flight, but they don't provide a positive separation of traffic. So now let's move on to the airspace classes. We have 3 different airspaces: controlled ones from Alpha to Echo, advisory and uncontrolled airspaces. Controlled airspaces from class Alpha to Echo are classified as controlled airspaces within which air traffic control ATC is provided, designated to provide separation service for en route controlled flights. ATC clearance is required for all traffic in controlled airspaces. Advisory airspace. Class Foxtrot is identified as advisory airspace in which advisory ATC is provided to IFR traffic which requests the service. Participating traffic, we need also to submit a flight plan for IFR, also ATC clearance is not required. Uncontrolled airspace. Only FIS is provided for all traffic, ATC clearance is not required. So on this table we can see the vertical boundaries of the airspaces and the difference between the FAA Federal Aviation Administration and EASA European Aviation Agency in European Union. I won't read all this text from this table, I just wanted to mention that there is slight difference between those aviation authorities. In Europe there is a no class Alpha and class Bravo. Also in class Charlie there is difference as well in the vertical boundaries. Also, as we mentioned before, class Foxtrot is not used in both of the administrations. The vertical boundaries in class Golf is a little bit different in FAA and EASA zones. So here is a graphic interpretation of the airspace classes by the FAA. The class Alpha only designated for IFR traffic, class Bravo controlled for national busy airports, class Charlie controlled airspace rounding airports that have operation control tower and services by radar approach control. Class Delta is designated for airports with operation control only. Class Echo, other non-classified controlled airspace. Class Foxtrot is not used in the USA. Class Golf, upper boundaries of class Golf uncontrolled. EASA classification of airspaces is a bit less complicated than FAA with the less classes of airspaces. Alpha and Bravo are not used. Class Charlie is only for common controlled traffic above flight level 9 or 5 or busy airports. Upper than Delta airspace, VFR is prohibited from flight level 19 or 5. Class Delta for control zone and TMA for other airport. Class Echo, other common airspace. Class Foxtrot is not used in the EASA classification. Class Golf from 0 AGL to 1000 feet or 2500 feet in mountain area. So this is a table determining the extent of services provided and requirements for VFR flights, arranged according to the classes of airspaces. The difference between this table and the other one is here that we can find the VMC flight visibility and distance from clouds minima. Services and requirements. In this table, we will bring information about the services provided and requirements for radio communication and filling a flight plan or not, or using transponder Sierra. This table should be very useful while passing the theoretical exam in the CAA. Let's take an example of the class Golf. For VFR, the flight information service is provided. For IFR, there is the flight information service. En route IFR is not allowed in some cases. Also, we don't need clearance to enter the class Golf. There is no separation in the class Golf. Radio is not required. We don't need a flight plan. We don't need transponder mode Sierra, mode Charlie for VFR. Transponder Charlie is needed for class Echo airspace from flight level 60, and transponder mode Sierra is needed for Charlie and Delta airspace. Let's take the Charlie class. We can see that for VFR flights, ATC and flight information service are provided, and for IFR flights, air traffic control is provided. You need to know that for Charlie airspace, we need clearance to enter. About the separation for IFR flights and for special VFR, separation is provided with other IFR, special VFRs and VFRs. There is speed limitations for VFR and IFR for each class of airspace. As I mentioned before, class Alpha and Bravo are not used in the European Union, and VFR traffic is not allowed in class Alpha. That means there is no speed limitations for VFR. Also, IFR traffic is not limited by the speed in those classes in the USA. The speed limitations for VFR is 250 knots below flight level 100, also in all TMA zones. For IFR, there is no limitations. For Delta, 250 knots, VFR and IFR. Echo, 250 knots, VFR and IFR. For class Foxtrot, it doesn't exist. For class Golf, 250 knots for VFR, and IFR is not allowed in the class Golf. The CTA is a control area, a control airspace extending upwards from a specific limit above the Earth to a specific upper limit, designated to provide service for en route controlled flights, extend from a level above ground level AGL to an altitude or a flight level. ATC clearance is required. So now that we finished discussing about airspace classification, let's talk about the restricted areas. There are some set of restricted areas. Those areas could be permanent, temporary or active. You can find the boundaries of those areas on the aeronautical charts. For that, we need also to check the AUP airspace use plan and check the latest NOTAMs, notice to airmen, to check the activity and the change of the status. If you are not sure about the activity of those areas, better to ask information service to have the actual information about the restricted areas on your route. First things first, prohibited area. It's an airspace of defined dimensions within which the flight of the aircraft is just prohibited. Violating prohibited airspace may result in military inspection and or the possibility of an attack upon the violating aircraft, which is not a good idea. Restricted areas, an airspace of defined dimensions within which the flight of aircrafts are restricted, when such airspace is activated and no permission has been received from appropriate ATS. Activation of restricted areas is published in Airspace Use Plan and its updates AUP/UUP. Check NOTAMs and contact FIS for specific information. Danger Flight Restricted Area is an airspace of defined dimensions within which activities are dangerous to the flight, as gas releasing or bomb disposal may exist. The vertical and lateral dimensions of danger areas are published in National AIP, together with the hours of operation where applicable. Temporary reserved area, an airspace of defined dimensions where only the aerial operations can be conducted and through which, at the activation, the transit is not allowed without operate ATC clearance. That means we cannot pass through this area without any clearance. Temporary restricted areas. Those areas are really temporary. You cannot find them on the aeronautical charts. The information is not published on the AIP, but you can find the information about the activity and the dimensions of those areas in NOTAMs and the supplementary of the aeronautical information, and plan your route of your flight according to this information. Temporary segregated areas are one more kind of restricted area where you can find aerial operations. When those areas are active, we cannot fly in. Also, military zone, military MATZ, military air traffic zone, for example. You can find military operation area where you can find parachute jumps operations. It's possible to enter those areas sometimes. You just need to ask air traffic control at least 15 nautical mile or 5 minutes of flight time from MATZ boundary. In some cases, you can cross this military area if you have the proper ATC clearance. Local airport advisory. In some small airports where is no control tower, there is a traffic zone where the flight service station is available. In this case, you can require information about traffic, wind and operating runway. You have to give intentions to enter, not clearance, but you have always to give intentions on the frequency of those flight service stations. Remote airport advisory. From remote airports with no control tower, no flight service station, you need to use the radio frequency to communicate between aircrafts. Those remote airports and advisory airports and traffic zones, they vary from country to country, but in Europe the radial of these zones are 2.5 nautical miles up to 10 nautical miles in USA. So that's all what you need to know about airspaces. I hope this video made it clear for you. We are producing flight lessons videos for you guys. We are also launching flight lessons podcast in audio format so you can listen to the courses without looking at the screen while driving or just going for a walk. So make sure to check it out. Fly safe and see you on the next video.